Welcome back. We're going to discuss non-immigrant visas for workers, also known as temporary working visas. The USCIS issues over 40 working visas, 40 temporary visas, of which only a small handful are made for workers. The ones made for workers are typically known as the H visa. The H-1B is the most popular. We also have the E visa, the J visa, and the L visa, which are common for workers. So I'm going to just focus mostly on those. Some of the other visas, non-immigrant visas that you may have heard of, is there's T visas for victims of trafficking, and U visas for victims of crime, and the B visas for tourists, and the F visas for students, and the K visas for fiancés. And some of these visas do allow employment authorization, but the only visas that are specifically made for employment and that by themselves constitute employment-enabled applicants are the visas I just named. So let's talk first about the H-1B. The H-1B is for a specialty occupation. It's very common here in California, Silicon Valley. Many of the computer programmers in Silicon Valley are on H-1B visas. The government only issues 65,000 a year. There's an extra 20,000 reserved for people with master's degrees and/or doctorate degrees. There's a lottery because there's always a larger demand for those 65,000. So there's actually a lottery, and people are randomly selected, and the 65,000 that are selected can apply for them. The rest can't apply and have to try again next year. These are what's known as oversubscribed visas. There's more of a demand than there are a supply. That application, the H-1B application, does require paperwork with the Department of Labor, which we talked about earlier, a labor condition attestation, Form ETA 9035, which I believe is a form I link to it at Blackboard, so you should look at that. And the Form I-129 is the application for the visa, and the Form I-129 is the application for all employment-based non-immigrant visas, and it has a supplement to it based on the visa you're applying for. So the I-129, you'd fill that out, and then you'd also fill out the supplement for the H-1B. If you were applying for an L1 visa, which is another common work-based visa for folks who are already working in a company overseas. Let's say they work at Sony as a manager, and they are being transferred to work for Sony in Los Angeles as a manager. That's known as the intra-company transferee management visa. And that L1 visa is also done on that same form, but there would be a different supplement that you would fill out. And that people in those L1 visas have to have executive capacities or managerial capacities, and they can apply for that visa. As an HR professional, you would have to be able to supply the attorneys working on the visa application form information about that visa. We would need to supply information about the applicant and about the company. Licenses the company holds, articles of incorporation. You'd want photographs of the physical buildings and offices to prove the company exists. You'd want to have financial statements, a lot of information about the job being offered, and organizational charts, utility bills, tax returns, all kinds of information about the actual company as well as the applicant. The attorney working on the case will need that information. A couple of other visas that you should be aware of. There's an investor visa, E1, E2. HR people don't usually get involved in that because the investors typically aren't coming to work for a company. They're coming to invest or start their own companies, but that is another work-based visa. TN visas. These are visas, special visas based on a international treaty between Canada, the United States, and Mexico, and they allow people that pertain to NAFTA to come and work, and those can be renewed indefinitely. I believe it's a 3-year term, and it can be renewed indefinitely, and Canadians are given those visas almost automatically. Mexicans actually need to qualify for a visitor visa status before they can get the TN visa, and that's very difficult for Mexicans to do. So you tend to see a lot of TN visas for Canadians and not Mexicans. So those are some of the visas that I wanted to quickly go over. Non-immigrant visas. Again, these are visas that do not lead to green cards. They're for folks that want to come and work in the United States on a temporary basis. They're typically issued for a period of time, usually 2 or 3 years. They can be renewed many times. The H-1B can be renewed it's issued for 3 years. It can be renewed once for another 3 years. And if the person at that point is applying for a permanent visa through their employer, then they can get an extra year on the H-1B while that process is going. We'll talk about permanent employment-based visas in the next section. So I hope this has been a helpful introduction. Please look at the all the links below and the videos. It's going to be a heavy emphasis on the H-1B, and we'll go from there. Thanks, folks.